Back, everyone, here to Live Now from Fox. I'm your host, Mike Page. Always great to be with you as we continue to roll on. All right, we are on the eve of the runoff election out in Texas between John Cornyn and Ken Paxton. Of course, President Trump putting out on Truth Social that he was endorsing Ken Paxton, and now we see what the voters think. We have been seeing, no doubt, what has happened in the past with those recommendations and endorsements that President Trump has had. So if you're Ken Paxton right now, you're probably going to sleep pretty good tonight. But let's bring in our next guest to help break it all down. Please welcome Jeanette Hoffman, Republican strategist. Jeanette, great to have you on here. And so we've seen what has happened with these endorsements as of late from President Trump. Does it continue for Ken Paxton tomorrow?
Well, Ken Paxton could be a lucky guy with President Trump's endorsement because he does have a very successful track record in these Republican primaries. He's very popular among the MAGA base, and Republican primaries tend to be lower voter turnout. So really the most devoted of the Republican base is going to turn out in this Texas primary. So that does bode well for Ken Paxton, the Attorney General, who has the endorsement of President Trump. John Cornyn is the sitting U.S. Senator. He's been there since 2002. So he's hoping that his record of serving the state of Texas is going to prevail. But we'll have to see. I mean, it's a really one of the hottest races in the entire country.
Yeah, it really is. And I think some people that weren't so glued in to the race when they saw President Trump endorsing Ken Paxton, maybe were a little thrown off. But others say, that Cornyn was more of the establishment, and he feels that Ken Paxton is going to be more in the MAGA vision.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I think President Trump held off for a little while, and people thought he may have stayed neutral in this race because Senator Cornyn has pretty much been a Trump ally during his time in the Senate. During the president's first term, Senator Cornyn was the GOP whip and helped him to get votes. And it was even rumored at one point that President Trump had asked Senator Cornyn to be his FBI director in his cabinet. So folks thought that maybe President Trump would stay neutral here, but I think sometimes President Trump wants to be with the winner, and it was reading the tea leaves, so he endorsed Attorney General Paxton here. But then, Senator Cornyn had said, this is not an endorsement against me, it's against the establishment and the Senate that hasn't gotten enough done for President Trump.
And it seems like this go around for President Trump in his second administration, it seems that he has more pull right now with the endorsements that he is doing rather than the first time go around when he was president and heading into midterms. Why is that?
Well, I think it's just, for so many years, he has been in control of the Republican Party, and he's known now as the leader of the Republican Party. So he's obviously has a very powerful war chest to back these races, and he's been very successful. If you look at Louisiana and Senator Bill Cassidy, that he basically got behind his opponent, Thomas Massie in Kentucky, that member of Congress he ousted, even some state legislative races in Indiana. Kind of people are calling it his vengeance tour. And, he's looking to those who have not been loyal to him to remove them from office.
Yeah, I mean, just last week, he's even throwing out the idea that maybe somebody should run against Boebert in Colorado.
Yeah. When she came out and was stumping for Thomas Massie during his campaign, he sent out a warning shot and via a Truth Social post, as he often does, that she may be in trouble. And she's been a loyal MAGA soldier, as you know. So it's interesting to see. I mean, he really values loyalty above anything else. But, at the same time, he's going to have to deal with members of Congress in the Senate and in the House who he ousted that are going to be in office for the next 6 months, who have nothing to lose and may vote against his agenda.
The political battle inside the Republican Party is reaching a boiling point in Texas, and once again, all eyes are turning toward one man, former President Donald Trump. As the runoff election between Senator John Cornyn in Texas, Attorney General Ken Paxton approaches, political analysts across America are watching closely because this race is no longer just about Texas. It has become a test of Trump's power, a test of loyalty inside the Republican Party, and perhaps most importantly, a preview of what America's political future could look like heading into 2028. During a live political discussion, Republican strategist Jeanette Hoffman joined Fox to break down what is becoming one of the most explosive Senate battles in the country. And right from the beginning, one thing became very clear. Trump's endorsement of Ken Paxton may have completely changed the race. For years, Senator John Cornyn represented the traditional Republican establishment. He has served in the Senate since 2002. He has deep political connections, decades of experience, and a long history inside Washington. On paper, Cornyn looked difficult to beat. But politics in America has changed dramatically since Donald Trump entered the political world. Today, loyalty to Trump often matters more than seniority, experience, or even establishment support inside Republican primaries. And according to political experts, that reality may now be working against Cornyn. Jeanette Hoffman explained that Republican primaries usually attract lower voter turnout compared to general elections. That means the most passionate and energized voters tend to dominate the outcome. And right now, the MAGA base remains one of the strongest and most loyal political forces in America. That is exactly why Trump's endorsement carries enormous weight. When Trump publicly backed Ken Paxton on Truth Social, many political observers immediately understood the message. Trump had chosen his side, and historically, candidates endorsed by Trump have often gained massive momentum almost overnight. That is why some analysts believe Ken Paxton probably went to sleep very comfortably before Election Day. Because whether people love Trump or hate him, one thing is undeniable. His influence over Republican voters remains extremely powerful. What makes this race especially fascinating is that many people originally believed Trump might stay neutral. After all, John Cornyn was not known as a major enemy of Trump during his presidency. In fact, Cornyn often supported Trump's agenda in the Senate. He reportedly helped push votes through Congress during Trump's first administration and was even rumored at one point to be considered for FBI director. So when Trump suddenly endorsed Paxton instead, many Republicans were shocked. But according to Jeanette Hoffman, Trump may have simply been reading the political landscape. He may have realized that the Republican grassroots in Texas were already leaning heavily toward Paxton, and Trump has always preferred aligning himself with winners. Still, Cornyn's supporters quickly pushed back against the narrative. They argued that Trump's endorsement was not necessarily a personal attack on Cornyn himself, but rather an attack on what many MAGA supporters call the Republican establishment. That frustration has been building for years among Trump supporters who believe some Republican leaders failed to fight aggressively enough for Trump's agenda, and now Trump appears increasingly determined to reshape the Republican Party in his own image. That theme came up repeatedly during the interview. Jeanette Hoffman even described what some people are now calling Trump's revenge tour. Because Trump is not only endorsing allies, he also appears willing to politically punish Republicans he believes were disloyal to him, and that is sending shockwaves throughout the party. Over the past few years, Trump has demonstrated an extraordinary ability to influence Republican primaries. Candidates he supports often gain massive fundraising boosts, increased media attention, and stronger support from conservative voters. Meanwhile, Republicans who oppose him or criticize him frequently find themselves targeted. The interview highlighted several examples, including Trump backing challengers against sitting Republicans like Senator Bill Cassidy and criticizing members of Congress who failed to fully support his agenda. One particularly surprising moment involved Congresswoman Lauren Boebert. Despite previously being considered one of Trump's strongest MAGA allies, she reportedly faced criticism after supporting Congressman Thomas Massie, who had tensions with Trump politically. That moment revealed something extremely important about Trump's political strategy. For Trump, loyalty is everything. More than ideology, more than seniority, more than experience. Political loyalty has become one of the central pillars of Trump's movement. But as the Fox hosts pointed out, this strategy also creates risks. Because Republicans pushed out by Trump-backed candidates may still remain in office temporarily, and angry lawmakers who feel betrayed could become obstacles to Trump's future agenda. That is the double-edged sword Jeanette Hoffman referred to during the interview. Trump's dominance gives him enormous power. But it can also create internal division, and nowhere is that conflict more visible right now than in Texas. Ken Paxton himself is already a highly controversial figure. While many conservatives admire him for aggressively fighting Democratic policies and aligning himself closely with Trump, critics point to various allegations and scandals surrounding him. That raises an important question. Could Paxton actually win a general election against Democrats if he becomes the Republican nominee? Jeanette Hoffman explained that opinions remain divided. On one hand, Paxton energizes the Republican base in ways that few politicians can. His supporters see him as a fighter, someone willing to battle against Washington elites and defend conservative values aggressively. But others worry he may be too controversial for moderate voters. Meanwhile, Democrats are closely watching the situation, hoping internal Republican divisions could create an opportunity to flip the Senate seat. Although Texas remains a Republican-leaning state, Democrats continue investing heavily in competitive races, especially as the national battle for Senate control intensifies. And that larger national context makes this race even more important, because control of the Senate affects everything: judges, laws, investigations, cabinet appointments, Supreme Court confirmations. Every Senate seat matters enormously. And according to political strategists, only a handful of Senate races in America are truly competitive right now. Texas may become one of the most watched of them all, but perhaps the most fascinating part of the entire discussion focused on Trump's future influence beyond his presidency. One of the hosts asked a question many Americans are quietly wondering. Will Trump continue controlling Republican politics even after leaving office? Jeanette Hoffman's answer suggested that the answer may very well be yes. She explained that Trump's influence over the Republican base remains incredibly strong. Whoever receives his support in the future, whether figures like J.D. Vance, Marco Rubio, or someone else entirely, could immediately gain a major advantage in future presidential primaries. And that possibility is already shaping the political behavior of Republicans nationwide, because many politicians understand that opposing Trump publicly can carry enormous political consequences. That reality has transformed the Republican Party over the past several years. The party is no longer simply divided between conservatives and moderates. Increasingly, the divide is becoming pro-Trump versus anti-Trump. And as this Texas race demonstrates, Trump still appears to hold enormous influence over the direction of the Republican movement. For supporters, Trump remains a political warrior fighting against establishment politics. For critics, his growing dominance raises concerns about division, loyalty tests, and the concentration of political influence around one individual. But regardless of perspective, one thing is impossible to deny: Donald Trump continues to shape American politics in ways few former presidents ever have. And as voters head to the polls in Texas, the outcome may send a message far beyond one Senate race. It may reveal just how powerful Trump's political movement still is, and whether the Republican Party of the future will fully belong to MAGA politics for years to come.